be looking at estimating square roots today. So go ahead and in your table of contents, it's going to be page 1516. And let's label it estimating square roots, square and cube roots. We want to be able to do both. And today's date is the 24th. Okay, so if we go to those pages, let's go ahead and label estimating square and cube roots. Before we get started with the notes, what I want you to do is just make a list of all of your perfect cubes and all of your perfect squares. And we can label these perfect squares, perfect cubes, and then just write down all of them. So we know square root of 1 is 1, square root of 4 is 2, square root of 9 is 3, and then same for cube roots. Cube root, well, our first perfect cube is 1. The next one is 2 cubed, which is 8, so a cube root of 8 is 2. And then 3 cubed is 27, so cube root of 27 is 3. So I want you to take a second, try to finish this list, try to get all the way to 15, and that will help us out as we do the rest of the problems, give us something to reference. So take a second, try to fill these out on your own, and then you can check mine. So here are all of mine that I did. I went through and did all the perfect squares all the way to 15. So square root of 225 we know is 15. And then the cube roots, I did those to 15 as well. Really, as long as you can remember the cube roots all the way up to 10, so the cube root of 1,000, you should be good. These last 5 I don't see all that often. I found them by just doing 15 cubed, and I got this number, so I know the cube root of 3,375 is 15. But try to remember the first 15 square roots and the first 10 perfect cubes, and that'll help you out when you do these sort of problems. So if we look at estimating square roots, let's take an example. We'll do the example off to the right, and then our steps will be off to the left here. So for our example, let's say we want to take the square root of 57. Well, 57 isn't one of our perfect squares, so it's irrational. So to find this, there's a few steps we have to do. First thing you want to do is determine what two perfect squares the number is in between. So here, if we look at this one, 57, if we go back to our perfect squares, 57 is in between the square root of 49 and the square root of 64. So we know that's the square root of 49, square root of 64. So we can just say square root of 57 is somewhere in the middle of those two. And then we determine the whole number. By taking square root of the lower square root. So in this case, our lower square root is 49, so the square root of 49 is 7. So we know it's 7 point something if we were to estimate the square root of 57. And then we want to make a fraction. So to find numerator, we want to find the difference between the square root we want to find and the lower square root. So subtract square root we're trying to find with lower square root. So we want to find 57. The lower one is 49. So if we do 57 minus 49, we get 8. So that's our numerator. 8 is our numerator. And then denominator will be subtract lower square root and higher square root. So that's just saying from 49 to 64, subtract those. And when we subtract that, we get 15. So that tells us there's just 15 of those unit squares, like those squares we drew up in class, 15 unit squares in between a square that's 7 by 7 and a square that's 8 by 8. So we know that's our denominator. And now we just want to divide fraction to make decimal. So we're going to be able to use a calculator for this. So if we divide on a calculator 8 divided by 15, we get 0.53 with the 3 repeating. So this is really 7.53 with that repeating. If we were to check our work on a calculator and try the square root of 57, we end up getting 7.549 and so on. So if the number in the tens place matches with the calculator, that means we did a pretty good job. So 7.53 is pretty close to 7.54. So that's a good estimate. Let's do one more with a cube root. So if we look at one with a cube root, like the cube root of 85. It's not one of our perfect cubes, so we know we have to estimate it. If you want to go ahead and try this using the steps we did above, go ahead and do that. If not, we'll just do it together. So cube root of 85, when you know that's in between the cube root of 64 and the cube root of 125. So cube root of 64, cube root of 125. So we got what it's in between. Now determine the whole number by taking the square root, or in this case, the cube root of the lower number. Our lower number is 64, cube root of 64 is 4. So we know that's our whole number. Find the numerator, subtract the square root we're trying to find with the lower square root. So this is what we're trying to find minus this cube root. So 85 minus 64. And we go ahead and get 21. So that's our numerator. And then the denominator, we just subtract the two perfect cube roots that we know this is in between. So 125 minus 64, we go ahead and get 61. So that's our numerator, or denominator, sorry. Again, go ahead and divide 21 divided by 61, and we get 4 point, I'm just going to round it to 3/4. Usually it'll say round to the tenths, so in this case it would be 4.3, and it's not exact, so I'm going to put that about sign. And again, if we were to do the cube root of 85, we would get something really close to this. We get 4.39, which rounds to 4.4, but still really close if we're just estimating. Remember, we can't get an exact answer without a calculator. There you go. There's some rules and steps for you to follow.